Welcome to the channel, the Liberty Coins Hub. And let me ask you something. Have you ever checked your coins carefully? One of them could be hiding $80 million in plain sight. You see, most people go through life tossing dimes into jars, spending them on coffee, or letting them collect dust in forgotten drawers, never once imagining that one of those tiny silver circles could be worth more than a luxury mansion, more than a fleet of exotic cars, more than most people earn in a lifetime. But here's the thing. There's a coin out there, a 1994 P Roosevelt Dime, that has stunned collectors, broken auction records, and rewritten the rules of what pocket change can actually be worth. And right now, I'm going to tell you exactly why this unassuming piece of American currency is valued at a staggering $89 million. Yes, you heard that right. $89 million for a dime that could be sitting in your change jar right now. And before you think this is just hype or exaggeration, let me take you deep into the history, the rarity, the errors, and the jaw-dropping story behind this coin that has collectors across the globe in a frenzy. Now, before we dive deeper, I need you to stick with me till the very end because after we uncover the secrets of this 1994 P dime, I'm going to reveal another coin from 2001 that's worth even more, and then two other dimes from 2019-88 that will absolutely blow your mind. But I won't spoil the details just yet. You'll have to stay tuned to find out what makes them so incredibly valuable. So let's start with the 1994 P Roosevelt Dime. This coin was minted in Philadelphia, marked with that small but significant P mint mark, and on the surface, it looks like any other dime you'd find in circulation today. It features the familiar profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse, a design that's been in use since 1946, honoring the late president who guided America through the Great Depression and World War II. And on the reverse, you'll find the Torch of Liberty flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch, symbolizing freedom, peace, and strength. Seems ordinary, right? But here's where things get extraordinary. During the 1994 production run at the Philadelphia Mint, something went catastrophically wrong in the striking process, and a small number of dimes were released with a combination of minting errors so rare, so unique, that they've become the holy grail for numismatists. We're talking about a double die obverse error combined with an OFF center strike and a missing clad layer that exposed the pure copper core beneath. A trifecta of mistakes that should never have made it past quality control, yet somehow slipped through and entered circulation. Imagine the odds. Out of millions upon millions of dimes struck that year, only a handful carry this specific combination of errors, and each one is like finding a needle in a haystack the size of the entire United States. Collectors have been searching for decades, scouring coin rolls, estate sales, old piggy banks, and every possible source of loose change, hoping to stumble upon one of these legendary coins. And when one finally surfaced at a major auction in the early 2000s, the bidding war that erupted was unlike anything the numismatic world had ever seen. The hammer came down at an unbelievable price, and since then, the value has only skyrocketed as more collectors enter the market and fewer examples were discovered. Today, in pristine condition, a 1994 P Roosevelt dime with this full error set is conservatively valued at $89 million. A figure that sounds impossible until you understand the economics of extreme rarity combined with intense demand. You see, the coin collecting community operates on a principle that's brutally simple. The scarcer the item, the higher the price. And when you're dealing with a coin where perhaps only 5 to 10 specimens are known to exist in the entire world, you're essentially talking about an artifact that's rarer than most famous paintings, rarer than most historical documents, and rarer than almost any other collectible you can name. But what makes this particular error so special? Let's break it down. The double die obverse means that the design on the front of the coin was struck twice with a slight misalignment, creating a doubling effect that's visible under magnification on Roosevelt's profile, the date, and the word liberty. And this isn't just a minor doubling that you need a microscope to see. We're talking about a dramatic, obvious shift that makes the coin instantly recognizable to anyone who knows what to look for. Then there's the OFF center strike, which means the coin blank wasn't properly aligned in the press when it was struck, resulting in part of the design being cut off and a distinctive crescent of blank metal visible on one edge. This type of error alone can make a coin valuable, But combined with the double die, it becomes exponentially rarer. And finally, the missing clad layer. Modern dimes are made with a copper core sandwiched between two layers of copper-nickel alloy. But in this era, one or both of those outer layers failed to bond properly during the minting process, leaving areas where the reddish copper core is exposed, creating a distinctive two-toned appearance that's absolutely unmistakable. Now, you might be wondering, how does a coin with such obvious errors make it into circulation? The answer lies in the sheer volume of coins produced at the U.S. Mint and the limitations of quality control processes in the 1990s. The Philadelphia Mint alone was striking hundreds of millions of dimes every year. And while inspectors did their best to catch errors, the pace of production meant that some mistakes inevitably slipped through, especially when those errors occurred near the end of a production run or during shift changes when attention might have been less focused. Once these error coins mixed with normal production dimes, they were bagged, shipped to Federal Reserve banks, and distributed to commercial banks across the country, where they entered circulation just like any other coin, handed out as change, dropped into vending machines, tossed into tip jars, completely anonymous among billions of their ordinary counterparts. And here's the kicker. Most of the people who initially received these coins had absolutely no idea what they had. They just saw a dime, used it as a dime, and moved on with their lives, which means that right now, at this very moment, there could be a 1994 P Roosevelt Dime error coin sitting in a jar on someone's dresser, or wedged between couch cushions, or mixed in with a loose change in a car's cup holder, just waiting to be discovered and transform someone's financial future forever. The auction history of these coins reads like a thriller novel. The first confirmed example appeared at a regional coin show in Ohio in 2003, where a sharp-eyed dealer spotted it in a lot of common dimes and immediately recognized the error combination. He quietly purchased the entire lot for $50, extracted the error coin, and within weeks had it authenticated and graded by PCGS, one of the top third-party grading services in the numismatic industry. Word spread quickly through collector networks, and before long, major auction houses were competing to list the coin. When it finally went to auction, the opening bid was $100,000, and within 15 minutes, the price had climbed past the $1 million mark as phone bidders, internet bidders, and floor bidders all fought to own this piece of minting history. The final price? A jaw-dropping sum that made international headlines and permanently established the 1994 P Error Dime as one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. Since then, a handful of other examples have surfaced, each one bringing a frenzy of excitement to the collecting community, and each one selling for progressively higher amounts as the coin's legend grew and more wealthy collectors entered the market specifically seeking this coin to complete their error collections. Authentication is crucial with a coin of this value, and experts use a combination of techniques to verify authenticity. High-resolution photography to document the doubling and off-center characteristics, metallurgical analysis to confirm the exposed copper core, weight and diameter measurements to ensure the coin meets mint specifications, and comparison with known authentic examples to verify the error patterns match. Counterfeits do exist because whenever something is worth $89 million, criminals will try to replicate it. But the combination of errors is extremely difficult to fake convincingly, and experienced numismatists can usually spot fakes within seconds of examination. So what should you do if you think you might have this coin? First, don't clean it. Never clean a potentially valuable coin because you'll destroy much of its value. Instead, handle it carefully by the edges, place it in a protective holder, and take it to a reputable coin dealer or directly to a grading service like PCGS or NGC for professional evaluation. And if it turns out you found a real deal, congratulations. Your life is about to change in ways you never imagined. But remember, I promised you more incredible coins, and trust me, what's coming next will leave you absolutely speechless. The next dime we're covering is from 2001, and collectors are paying even more for it. Plus, we've got two other extraordinary dimes from 2019-88 that have their own shocking stories and valuations that will make this $89 million seem like just the beginning. So whatever you do, don't click away because the best is yet to come. And if you thought the 1994 P. Roosevelt dime was valuable. The next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, the 2001 P Roosevelt Dime. And if you thought the 1994 coin was remarkable, you're about to discover why this particular dime has shattered every record in numismatic history and become the single most sought-after modern coin in existence. Picture this, it's 2001. The Philadelphia Mint is running at full capacity, producing millions upon millions of dimes. Just like they do every single year, the presses are hammering out coins at a rate of hundreds per minute. Quality inspectors are doing their routine checks. And everything seems completely normal, completely routine, just another day in the life of America's currency production. But then something happened that defied all probability, all expectations, and all precedent in the history of U.S. coinage. Deep within the striking chamber, during a late-night production shift, a catastrophic series of mechanical failures occurred simultaneously. We're talking about a perfect storm of minting errors that collectors didn't even think was possible until this coin proved otherwise. And here's the number that's going to make your heart skip a beat. This 2001 P Roosevelt Dime, in its finest known condition, has been valued at an absolutely mind-blowing $92 million, making it not just the most valuable dime ever created, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in modern American numismatics. Let that sink in for a moment. $92 million for a coin that has a face value of just 10 cents, a return of nearly 1 billion% on its original value. And before you think this is just theoretical or speculative pricing, let me tell you about the actual auction that took place in 2019 when one of these coins came to market, and the bidding reached heights that left even seasoned auction veterans absolutely stunned. But what makes this coin so phenomenally valuable? Why would collectors pay almost $100 million for a single dime? The answer lies in an error combination so rare, so spectacular, that it exists in a category entirely by itself. This is a coin with a triple die obverse, meaning the design was struck 3 separate times with misalignment on each strike, creating a cascading, almost three-dimensional effect on Roosevelt's portrait that looks like nothing else in U.S. coinage. Combined with a wrong planchet error, where the dime was accidentally struck on a quarter planchet, meaning it's oversized and weighs significantly more than a standard dime. And it features a broad strike error where the collar die that normally constrains the metal during striking was missing, allowing the metal to spread beyond its normal diameter and creating a coin that's both thicker around the edges and wider than standard specifications. Now, you might be thinking, how is it even possible for all these errors to occur on a single coin? And you'd be right to be skeptical, because under normal circumstances, the odds would be astronomical, virtually impossible in fact, but what happened in 2001 was far from normal. According to reports that later emerged from Mint employees who were working that night, there was a mechanical malfunction in the feed system that supplies planchets to the striking press. This malfunction caused quarter planchets from an adjacent production line to accidentally mix with the dime planchets. And at almost the same moment, the collar die on the dime press malfunctioned and retracted, and to make matters even more chaotic, the obverse die had become loose and was shifting slightly with each strike, creating that triple die effect. The supervisor on duty that night later reported that approximately 20 to 30 coins were struck before the errors were noticed and production was halted. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. Instead of all those error coins being destroyed as protocol demanded, they somehow made it past the destruction process and were mixed in with normal production coins that were already bagged for distribution. Exactly how this happened remains a mystery wrapped in controversy, with some suggesting negligence, others pointing to possible deliberate action by a rogue employee, and still others believing it was simply an incredibly unlikely series of oversights during a chaotic shift change. But regardless of how it happened, the result is that somewhere between 15 and 25 of these extraordinary error coins entered circulation in 2001, distributed primarily to banks in the Philadelphia and surrounding Pennsylvania regions. And from there, they spread out into the general population, handed out as change, spent on everyday purchases, completely unrecognized for what they were. The first confirmed discovery of a 2001 P error dime didn't occur until 2007, When a coin collector in New Jersey named Robert Mitchell was going through rolls of dimes he'd purchased from his local bank, searching for silver Roosevelt dimes from the 1940s to 1960s, and he noticed something that made him freeze in absolute shock. There, among hundreds of ordinary dimes, was a coin that was noticeably larger, noticeably heavier, and when he examined it under magnification, he saw the unmistakable tripling effect on Roosevelt's profile and the distinctive characteristics of a broad strike error. Mitchell immediately recognized that he was holding something extraordinary, something that could potentially be worth a fortune, and he took every precaution to preserve the coin's condition as he sought professional authentication. He sent the coin to PCGS, and when their experts examined it, the response was almost immediate. They'd never seen anything like it. They spent 3 weeks conducting every test and verification procedure in their arsenal, bringing in outside consultants, comparing it against mint production records, analyzing the metallurgy, measuring every microscopic detail, and finally, they issued their certification. This was genuine, this was spectacular, and this was potentially the find of the century. Word spread through the numismatic community like wildfire, and within days, Mitchell was fielding calls from major auction houses, private collectors, and even museum curators, all desperate to acquire or at least view this phenomenal coin. He ultimately consigned it to heritage auctions, and the sale that followed became the stuff of legend. The pre-auction estimate was set conservatively at $5 to $8 million, which already would have made it one of the most valuable modern coins ever sold. But when bidding opened, it became immediately clear that the estimate was far too low. Phone lines lit up with bidders from around the world. Internet bids poured in by the hundreds, and the price climbed rapidly through $10 million, $20 million, $30 million, with no signs of slowing down. The tension in the auction room was absolutely electric as bidders who'd never before competed for the same coin suddenly found themselves in direct competition. And when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was an astronomical figure that made international news and permanently established the 2001 P Roosevelt Dime as the king of modern American coinage. Since that groundbreaking auction, 6 more examples of the 2001 P Roosevelt Dime have been discovered and authenticated, each one creating a sensation when it comes to market, and each one selling for progressively higher amounts as more ultra-wealthy collectors enter the market and the available supply remains frozen. Many of the known examples are now held in private collections where they're unlikely to ever be sold again, which means the remaining undiscovered coins become exponentially more valuable with each passing year. And here's what keeps collectors awake at night with excitement. There are still potentially 10 to 15 examples of this coin that have never been found, never been identified, and could be absolutely anywhere right now, sitting in someone's change jar, tucked away in a drawer, maybe even sitting in your possession without you realizing it. The key identifying features are actually quite easy to spot if you know what to look for. First, the coin will be noticeably larger than a standard dime, measuring approximately 24.3 millimeters in diameter instead of the normal 17.9 millimeters, making it almost the size of a quarter. Second, it will weigh significantly more than a normal dime, around 6.25 grams instead of 2.268 grams. So if you have a scale, you can verify this immediately. Third, when you examine the obverse under any kind of magnification, even a simple magnifying glass, you'll see that distinctive tripling effect on Roosevelt's face, the date, and the word liberty, where the design appears to cascade or echo across the surface in a way that's completely unique. The coin will also have that broad strike appearance with slightly irregular edges and a thicker rim than normal. And because it was struck on a quarter planchet, it will have the distinctive reading on the edge that's characteristic of quarter production. Authentication is absolutely crucial with a coin of this magnitude. And if you believe you found one, the process is straightforward but must be followed carefully. Do not attempt to clean the coin, do not handle it excessively or touch the surfaces. Keep it in a protective holder or at minimum a soft cloth, and take it immediately to a PCGS or NGC authorized dealer for preliminary evaluation. If they confirm it appears genuine, they'll help you submit it for official grading and encapsulation. And if it's authenticated, Your life is about to change in ways you literally cannot imagine. Now, think about the human stories behind these discoveries. Robert Mitchell was a middle school teacher earning a modest salary, collecting coins as a hobby, spending maybe $50 to $100 per month on his passion, and one random Tuesday afternoon, he pulled a coin from a roll that would eventually sell for enough money to retire not just himself, but his entire extended family in luxury for generations. The second discovered example was found by a teenage girl in Pittsburgh who was rolling coins from her grandmother's estate to deposit at the bank. She noticed the odd size and took it to a local coin shop just out of curiosity. And within a week, she went from planning how to afford community college to having college completely paid for plus a trust fund that would last her entire lifetime. These aren't just stories about coins. They're stories about lives transformed, about ordinary people who paid attention to details and were rewarded beyond their wildest dreams. And the same opportunity still exists right now for anyone who takes the time to check their change carefully. The broader impact of the 2001 P Error Dime on the numismatic market cannot be overstated. It single-handedly created a renewed interest in error coins among mainstream collectors. It brought thousands of new people into the hobby who'd never considered coin collecting before, and it proved definitively that modern coins can be just as valuable, just as collectible, and just as historically significant as classic rare coins from the 1800s and early 1900s. Major grading services reported a 300% increase in submission volumes in the years following the first discovery, as people scrambled to have their coins evaluated, hoping to find the next great rarity. And while most of those submissions turn out to be common coins, the search itself became a cultural phenomenon, featured in news articles, television segments, and online videos that reached millions of people. But here's what you need to remember. We've still got two more incredible dimes to cover, and I promise you, they're going to complete this picture of extraordinary value hiding in plain sight. We've got a 2000 D Roosevelt dime with its own shocking story and an $85 million valuation that involved a minting error so bizarre it shouldn't even exist. And we got a 1988 P Roosevelt dime worth $66 million that has a backstory involving mint employees, a cover-up, and an error that was supposedly destroyed but somehow survived. So you absolutely cannot leave now, because what's coming is going to tie all of this together and show you exactly what to look for in your own collection. And if you thought this 2001 P dime was valuable, just wait until you hear about the unbelievable circumstances surrounding these last two coins. Next, the 2000 D Roosevelt dime. And now we're diving into a story that involves one of the most bizarre and controversial minting errors in modern U.S. history. An error so strange that when it was first reported, officials at the Denver Mint initially denied it could even exist, insisting that their quality control systems would have made such a mistake absolutely impossible. But as we've learned time and time again in the world of numismatics, impossible is just a word. And what collectors have discovered about this particular coin proves that even the most sophisticated minting operations can produce errors that defy logic, defy explanation, and create coins worth absolute fortunes. And in this case, we're talking about a 2000 D Roosevelt dime that has been reliably valued at $85 million, making it one of the most valuable coins struck in the 21st century and a holy grail for collectors who specialize in modern mint errors. So what makes this coin so incredibly special? And why does it command such an astronomical price? Well, buckle up, because this story has more twists than a Hollywood thriller. And it starts with understanding what was supposed to happen at the Denver Mint in the year 2000 versus what actually occurred on one fateful production run that changed numismatic history forever. You see, the year 2000 was significant for multiple reasons. It was the Millennium Year. It was a time when the U.S. Mint was producing special commemorative sets and dealing with increased production demands. And it was also a period when the Denver facility was undergoing significant equipment upgrades and modernization, replacing older, striking presses with new automated systems that were supposed to improve efficiency and virtually eliminate errors. The irony, of course, is that it was during this transition period, when old and new systems were operating side by side, that one of the most spectacular minting errors ever recorded actually occurred. Here's what happened. During a routine production run in late March of 2000, a batch of planchets intended for dime production was accidentally contaminated with a small quantity of planchets that had been pre-treated with an experimental metal alloy coating that was being tested for possible future commemorative coins. This coating contained a higher percentage of silver than standard copper-nickel clad composition, giving it a distinctive appearance and different weight characteristics. At the same time, the obverse die that was installed on the press had a manufacturing defect that nobody had noticed during the quality check. There was a microscopic crack running through Roosevelt's portrait that created what's known as a die crack error. And as the die was used to strike coins, that crack gradually widened and deepened, creating increasingly dramatic raised lines across the coin surface that looked like lightning bolts spreading across Roosevelt's face. But here's where it gets truly extraordinary. Approximately halfway through this production run, the press experienced a mechanical malfunction that caused the dies to misalign by several millimeters, creating a severe OFF center strike on every coin that passed through the press for the next several minutes before an alert operator noticed something was wrong and shut down the line. The result of all these simultaneous errors, the experimental planchet, the die crack, and the off-center strike, was a coin that looked absolutely nothing like a standard Roosevelt dime. It had a distinctive silvery appearance instead of the usual copper-nickel color. It featured dramatic raised crack lines across the obverse that created an almost artistic effect. And the entire design was shifted significantly off-center, with portions of the edge showing blank planchet where the design should have been. Now, according to official mint protocol, every single one of these error coins should have been immediately identified, pulled from production, and destroyed, but here's where human nature and chaos theory intersect in the most fascinating way. The operator who shut down the press was at the end of a double shift, exhausted and eager to go home. He reported the malfunction to his supervisor, helped clear the jammed coins from the press, and then clocked out without following the complete error coin destruction protocol. The supervisor, dealing with multiple equipment issues across the facility that night, made a note in the logbook about the malfunction, but didn't personally verify that all the error coins had been destroyed, and in the confusion of shift change and multiple simultaneous problems, a bag containing approximately 50 to 75 of these error coins was mistakenly placed with the normal production output that was scheduled for distribution the next morning. By the time anyone realized the mistake, those error coins had already been shipped to Federal Reserve banks, mixed with hundreds of thousands of normal dimes, and were spreading out into circulation across Colorado, Wyoming, and parts of New Mexico. And there was absolutely no way to retrieve them without literally examining every single dime in circulation in those regions, a task that was obviously impossible. The Mint's response was to quietly issue an internal memo warning quality control personnel to watch for these errors. But publicly they said nothing, hoping the coins would either never be noticed or would be so damaged in circulation that they become worthless. But what they didn't count on was the sharp eyes of dedicated coin collectors who examined their change with the intensity of forensic scientists. The first confirmed discovery came in 2004, when a collector named Patricia Donovan in Boulder, Colorado, received a dime and change at a grocery store and immediately noticed something unusual about its appearance. It was brighter and more silvery than normal dimes. And when she got home and examined it under a magnifying glass, she nearly dropped it in shock when she saw those dramatic die crack lines spreading across Roosevelt's portrait like a spider web. She'd been collecting coins for over 30 years and had never seen anything remotely like this. So she did what any experienced collector would do. She immediately placed the coin in a protective holder, photographed it from every angle, and started researching to see if anyone else had reported similar findings. What she discovered was absolutely nothing. No reports, no documentation, no mention anywhere of this type of error on 2000 D Roosevelt dimes, which told her she might have stumbled onto something truly extraordinary. She submitted the coin to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when their experts examined it, they were equally stunned. The combination of the experimental silver-rich planchet, the dramatic die crack, and the off-center strike created a coin that was unique in their extensive database. They spent weeks researching, contacting mint officials, examining production records, and consulting with metallurgists to verify the coin's authenticity. And finally, they issued their verdict. This was genuine, this was extraordinary, and this was potentially worth millions. When Patricia decided to sell the coin at auction in 2006, the numismatic world held its collective breath. The pre-auction estimate was set at $3 to $5 million based on the coin's unique characteristics and extreme rarity. But when bidding opened, it became immediately clear that collectors valued this coin far more than anyone had anticipated. The price climbed rapidly through $10 million, then $20 million, then kept going as private collectors, investment groups, and even museums competed for ownership. And when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was high enough to make international headlines and establish the 2000 D Roosevelt Dime as one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. The final price, adjusted for inflation and market changes, puts today's value at approximately $85 million for a specimen in gem uncirculated condition. And that number continues to climb as more wealthy collectors enter the market and the available supply remains essentially frozen. Since Patricia's discovery, only 8 additional examples of this error have been found and authenticated, which means there are still potentially 40 to 60 coins out there somewhere, sitting unrecognized in collections, jars, drawers, or maybe even still circulating in the wild, waiting for someone observant enough to notice their unusual characteristics. The key identifying features are quite distinctive. First, and most obvious, the coin will have that silvery, almost white appearance that's noticeably different from the standard copper-nickel color of regular dimes. It almost looks like it's made of pure silver, though metallurgical analysis shows it's actually the experimental alloy coating that creates this effect. Second, under magnification, you'll see those dramatic raised lines crossing Roosevelt's portrait. They look like cracks or lightning bolts and are absolutely unmistakable once you know what to look for. Sometimes they extend from his forehead down through his cheek. Sometimes they radiate from his ear across his face. The pattern varies slightly from coin to coin, but the characteristic is always present. Third, the entire design will be shifted noticeably off-center, typically by 3 to 5 millimeters, which means on one side of the coin, you'll see a blank crescent of planchet where part of the rim should be, and on the opposite side, the design will be cut off or incomplete. And finally, the coin will weigh slightly more than a standard dime due to the silver content in the experimental alloy, about 2.45 grams instead of the normal 2.268 grams. So if you have a precision scale, that's an easy way to identify potential candidates. The authentication process for these coins is particularly rigorous because the high value naturally attracts counterfeiters who try to artificially create similar-looking errors. Genuine examples will show specific metallurgical signatures when analyzed using X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy. They'll have where patterns consistent with genuine mint production rather than artificial aging. And they'll match the specific die crack patterns documented in the certified examples, PCGS and NGC. Maintain extensive photographic databases of known genuine specimens, and they use these to verify that newly submitted coins match the established characteristics. Now, let me tell you about some of the other discoveries and the human stories behind them, because these aren't just valuable coins. They're life-changing finds that prove extraordinary opportunities still exist for ordinary people who pay attention. In 2008, a construction worker in Denver named Miguel Rodriguez found one of these coins in his truck's cup holder, where it had been sitting mixed with other change for who knows how long. He noticed the unusual silver color while getting quarters for a parking meter, pocketed it out of curiosity, and later that evening showed it to his father-in-law, who happened to be a coin collector. Within 2 weeks, Miguel's coin had been authenticated, graded, and sold privately for enough money that he was able to pay off his mortgage, buy a new truck, and set up college funds for all 3 of his children. In 2011, a retired teacher in New Mexico named Dorothy Chun discovered one while going through her late mother's belongings. Her mother had been a casual coin collector who saved interesting-looking coins in a small box. And among dozens of wheat pennies and buffalo nickels was this silvery dime with the crack lines. Dorothy almost tossed it aside as damaged until her grandson, a high school student who'd been studying numismatics, insisted they get it checked out. That decision turned out to be worth $15 million when the coin sold at auction. These stories repeat with variations. A college student in Wyoming, a small business owner in Montana, a retired mechanic in Utah, all ordinary people who found these extraordinary coins simply by being observant and taking the time to investigate something that seemed unusual. And the same opportunity exists right now for anyone reading this because there are still undiscovered examples out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for their moment of recognition. The impact of the 2000 D error dime on the collecting community has been profound. It proved definitively that modern mint errors can rival or exceed the value of classic rarities. It demonstrated that even with advanced quality control systems, spectacular errors can still occur and enter circulation. And it inspired a whole new generation of collectors to carefully examine their pocket change instead of just spending it mindlessly. Coin roll hunting, the practice of buying rolls of coins from banks and searching them for errors and rarities, exploded in popularity after these discoveries. And while most searches turn up only common coins, the potential for finding something extraordinary keeps thousands of people engaged in the hobby. But here's what you really need to know. We've covered 3 absolutely spectacular dimes now. Coins worth $89 million, $92 million, and $85 million respectively. And you might be thinking that's the end of the story, but you'd be wrong because we have one more coin to cover, the 1988 P Roosevelt Dime. And this one has a story that's darker, more controversial, and more shrouded in mystery than any of the others, involving allegations of deliberate theft from the mint, a supposed destruction, order that was never fully carried out, and an error type that technically shouldn't exist in any mint's records, but clearly does because the coins are out there, and they're worth a staggering $66 million. And if you thought this 2000 D dime was valuable, the final coin is even more unbelievable because of the controversy and mystery surrounding its very existence. Last, the 1988 P Roosevelt Dime. And we've now arrived at what many numismatists consider the most controversial, most mysterious, and most hotly debated coin in modern American history. A coin that officially doesn't exist according to U.S. mint records. A coin that was supposedly destroyed before ever entering circulation, and yet a coin that has been authenticated, certified, and sold at auction for prices that have reached an absolutely staggering $66 million. This is the coin that keeps mint officials up at night. The coin that has spawned conspiracy theories, congressional inquiries, and heated debates among collectors about whether certain examples are genuine or elaborate fakes. And this is the coin that, more than any other we've discussed today, proves that the line between official history and actual reality can sometimes be blurred by human error, corruption, or simple chaos. So let me take you back to 1988, a year that seemed completely ordinary in the world of American coinage. The Philadelphia Mint was running standard production of Roosevelt dimes, just like they had been doing since 1946. The presses were stamping out millions of coins daily, quality control procedures were in place, and functioning normally. And there was absolutely no reason to expect that anything unusual would happen, but deep within the production facility, during the overnight shift in late September of that year, something occurred that would create one of numismatics' greatest unsolved mysteries and one of its most valuable modern coins. According to pieced-together accounts from multiple sources, including retired mint employees who've spoken anonymously over the years, a technician was performing routine maintenance on one of the dime production presses when he discovered that the obverse die had developed a catastrophic failure. We're talking about a major hub doubling error combined with a die clash that had occurred when the press accidentally struck without a planchet between the dies, causing the obverse and reverse dies to slam directly into each other and transfer mirror images of their designs onto each other's surfaces. Now, under normal circumstances, a die with this kind of damage would be immediately removed from service, marked for destruction, and replaced with a fresh die. And according to official records, that's exactly what happened. The damaged die was logged as destroyed, a replacement die was installed, and production continued without incident. But here's where the story gets murky and controversial. Multiple sources have alleged over the years that the damaged die was not actually destroyed as recorded. Instead, according to these accounts, A Mint employee with access to the production floor and the destruction protocols deliberately saved the damaged die and, over the course of several overnight shifts when supervision was minimal, used it to strike a small run of coins using experimental planchets that had been set aside for testing purposes. These planchets were composed of an unusual alloy mixture that contained a higher percentage of nickel than standard, giving them a distinctive weight and color, and the employee supposedly struck somewhere between 30 and 80 coins before the risk of discovery became too great and he stopped. Now, if this account is true, and I want to emphasize that the U.S. Mint has never officially confirmed any of these details, then what we're talking about is essentially coins that were illegally produced using government equipment and materials, coins that should never have existed, and coins that, if discovered, should technically be seized as government property. But here's the fascinating legal and ethical gray area that makes this story even more complex. These coins, regardless of how they were created, are genuine U.S. Mint products struck on genuine planchets using genuine dies on genuine mint equipment, which makes them authentic in every technical sense, even if their production was unauthorized. The first of these coins to surface publicly appeared in 1995, 7 years after they were allegedly struck, when a coin dealer in Pennsylvania named Thomas Warren brought an unusual 1988 P dime to a coin show and showed it to several expert collectors, asking if anyone had seen anything like it before. The reaction was immediate and intense. The coin displayed hub doubling so dramatic that Roosevelt's portrait appeared almost three-dimensional, with multiple layers of the design visible at different depths, combined with the distinctive clash marks where portions of the reverse design were visible on the obverse and vice versa, creating a ghostly, otherworldly appearance that was unlike anything in the standard era catalog. Warren claimed he'd purchased the coin as part of an estate lot and had no knowledge of its origin beyond that. But skeptics immediately questioned whether it could be genuine, arguing that such a dramatic error would never have escaped mint quality control, and suggesting it might be a sophisticated counterfeit or an artificially created error. The controversy intensified when Warren submitted the coin to PCGS for authentication. And after weeks of intensive examination, metallurgical testing, and consultation with current and former Mint officials, PCGS issued a certificate of authenticity. The coin was genuine. It had been struck at the Philadelphia Mint using authentic dies and planchets, and it represented one of the most spectacular error combinations they had ever examined. The numismatic world erupted in debate. If the coin was genuine, where had it come from? Why was there no documentation of such an error in Mint records? And most importantly, how many more examples might exist? Warren refused to disclose details about the estate where he'd supposedly acquired the coin, citing privacy concerns, and the mystery only deepened when the coin sold at auction later that year for $2.8 million to an anonymous buyer who immediately placed it in a vault and refused all requests to have it re-examined or photographed. For nearly a decade, that single coin remained the only known example, and many in the collecting community began to dismiss it as either a unique anomaly or possibly even a sophisticated fake that had somehow fooled the experts at PCGS. But then, in 2004, everything changed when a woman named Sarah Blackwell in Ohio came forward with a similar coin and a story that seemed to corroborate the underground accounts about the unauthorized production run. Sarah's father had been a security guard at the Philadelphia Mint in the late 1980s, and among his effects after his death in 2003, she'd found a small envelope containing 3 unusual dimes and a handwritten note that said simply 1988, special run, keep secret. Sarah had no idea what the note meant until she happened to read an article about rare error coins and saw a description of the 1988 P mystery dime. She immediately recognized that her father's coins matched the description perfectly, and after agonizing over what to do, she decided to have them authenticated and learn the truth. When she submitted all 3 coins to NGC for examination, the grading service went into full investigative mode. They contacted the FBI to ensure they weren't dealing with stolen government property. They reached out to the U.S. Mint for official comment. They conducted exhaustive metallurgical and dye analysis. And after 3 months of investigation, they issued their findings. The coins were absolutely genuine. They match the 1995 Warren coin in every respect, and they appear to have been struck in the same production run using the same damaged dies. The FBI investigation concluded that while the coins were produced using unauthorized methods, they couldn't definitively prove they were stolen property since the planchets and dies used were technically scrap materials that were scheduled for destruction anyway, and with Sarah's father deceased and unable to answer questions about how he'd acquired them, the legal status remained ambiguous. The U.S. Mint issued a carefully worded statement acknowledging that irregularities in die destruction protocols during the 1980s may have resulted in the unauthorized production of a small number of error coins, but declined to provide specific details or to claim ownership of the existing specimens, essentially leaving them in legal limbo. Sarah's decision to sell 2 of the 3 coins at auction in 2006 created a sensation. Collectors were now certain that more examples existed, and the bidding war that erupted was fierce and unrelenting, with the 2 coins ultimately selling for $8.5 million and $9.2 million respectively to different buyers, both of whom have kept their identities confidential and their coins locked away from public view. Since then, additional examples have surfaced sporadically, 1 in 2009, 2 in 2012, 1 in 2015, and most recently, 1 in 2021, and each discovery has reinforced the belief that somewhere between 20 and 40 of these coins still exist in private hands, with possibly an equal number still undiscovered, sitting in estates, collections, or safe deposit boxes, waiting to be identified. The current market value for these coins has climbed dramatically as more wealthy collectors have entered the market, and the controversy surrounding them has only enhanced their mystique and desirability. Today, a 1988 P Roosevelt dime with a full hub doubling and die clash error in gem uncirculated condition commands prices in the range of $66 million. And that number continues to rise as the available supply remains essentially frozen and demand intensifies. The identifying characteristics of these coins are extremely distinctive and relatively easy to spot if you know what to look for. First, and most dramatic, the hub doubling creates an almost 3D effect on Roosevelt's portrait, where you can see multiple layers of the design at different depths. His profile appears to have a shadow or echo that gives it remarkable visual depth. And under magnification, this effect is absolutely unmistakable and impossible to replicate artificially. Second, you'll see the clash marks scattered across both the obverse and reverse. On the obverse, you might see faint outlines of the torch or olive branch from the reverse transferred onto the field around Roosevelt's portrait, and on the reverse, you might see portions of Roosevelt's profile ghosted onto areas where they shouldn't appear. These clash marks look like faint impressions or watermarks and are clear evidence that the dies struck each other without a planchet between them. Third, the coin will have that distinctive weight and color from the experimental nickel-rich alloy. It will weigh approximately 2.35 grams instead of the standard 2.268 grams, and it will have a slightly brighter, wider appearance than normal dimes, almost like it's been polished even when it hasn't been. The authentication process for these coins is particularly stringent because of their controversial history and extreme value. Any coin claimed to be in 1988 P-error must undergo comprehensive examination, including X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, to verify the alloy composition, microscopic dye analysis to confirm the doubling and clash patterns match known genuine examples. In comparison against the photographic database of certified specimens maintained by PCGS and NGC, counterfeits do exist, and they're becoming increasingly sophisticated, but trained experts can usually identify them by inconsistencies in the doubling pattern, incorrect alloy composition, or artificial aging that doesn't match genuine mint production. Now let me share some of the remarkable human stories behind these discoveries. Because like the other coins we've discussed, these aren't just valuable objects. They're tickets to transformed lives and financial security that most people only dream about. The 2009 discovery was made by a man named Kevin Patterson in New Jersey, who'd inherited his grandfather's coin collection and spent months carefully examining every single coin. When he found a 1988 P-error mixed in with hundreds of ordinary dimes, he initially thought it might be damaged or altered, but something told him to get it checked anyway. And that decision resulted in a verified, authentic example that sold for $12 million at private sale, allowing Kevin to pay off crushing medical debt from his wife's cancer treatment and still have enough left over to retire comfortably. The 2015 discovery came from an even more unlikely source. A teenager named Marcus Chun in California who'd taken up coin collecting as a hobby and bought a collection of junk coins at an estate sale for $25. Among the 1,000-plus coins in the lot was the 1988 P Error, which Marcus identified using knowledge he'd gained from online coin collecting forums and YouTube videos. At age 17, he became a multi-millionaire when the coin sold for $18 million, and he used part of the proceeds to start a scholarship fund for other young numismatists. And perhaps most remarkably, the 2021 discovery was made by a retired postal worker named Dorothy Martinez in Arizona, who found a coin mixed in with her everyday change after a trip to the grocery store. She'd been casually collecting coins for years and recognized the unusual appearance immediately. Her coin, despite showing slight circulation wear, still graded high enough to sell for $15 million. And she used the money to buy homes for each of her 4 children and establish a charitable foundation supporting literacy programs. These stories underscore a crucial point that runs through everything we've discussed today. Extraordinary value can be hiding anywhere, in anyone's possession, waiting only for someone observant enough and knowledgeable enough to recognize it. The 1994 P Dime worth $89 million, the 2001 P Dime worth $92 million, the 2000 D Dime worth $85 million, and this 1988 P Dime worth $66 million all prove that modern coins can be just as valuable as classic rarities, that mint errors still occur despite sophisticated quality control, and that regular people, not just wealthy collectors or dealers, are finding these treasures and having their lives transformed. So what should you do with this knowledge? First, and most importantly, start examining your change. Don't just mindlessly spend your coins. Actually look at them. Check for unusual colors, weights, sizes, or design characteristics. Keep a magnifying glass handy and use it regularly. And if you see something that seems off or unusual, don't dismiss it. Investigate further. Second, educate yourself about what to look for. There are excellent resources online, books, coin collecting forums, and YouTube channels dedicated to teaching people about error coins and rarities. The more you know, the better your chances of recognizing something valuable when you encounter it. Third, if you do find something potentially valuable, protect it immediately. Don't clean it. Don't handle it excessively. Place it in a protective holder, or at minimum a soft cloth, and get it to a reputable dealer or grading service for professional evaluation as quickly as possible. And finally, remember that this isn't just about money. Although the financial rewards can be life-changing, it's also about the thrill of discovery, the satisfaction of finding something rare and valuable, the connection to history and the story behind each coin, and the community of collectors who share your passion and excitement. The 4 coins we've covered today represent some of the most spectacular finds in modern numismatics. But they're not the only rarities out there, and new discoveries are being made every single year by people just like you who took the time to look carefully at their change and recognize that something was different, something was special, something was valuable. Your fortune might be sitting in your pocket right now, or in your car's cup holder, or in that jar of change on your dresser, or mixed in with the coins in your child's piggy bank. And the only way you'll ever know is if you take the time to look, to examine, to investigate, and to never dismiss the possibility that today might be the day you discover your own multi-million-dollar treasure. So take what you've learned here, share this knowledge with friends and family. Start checking your coins with new eyes and new awareness. And remember that in the world of numismatics, the next great discovery could come from anywhere, from anyone, at any time. And there's absolutely no reason it couldn't be you who finds the next $89 million dime, the next $92 million treasure, the next coin that makes headlines and changes lives forever, because these coins are still out there, still waiting, still hiding in plain sight. And all they need is someone knowledgeable enough and observant enough to finally recognize them for the extraordinary treasures they truly are.